But obviously, when someone is playing at the elite level, you're supposed to give more than 100%. Because if you're not, then you're not doing justification to the role or for what purpose you're selected in the team. And there's no doubt that the modern generation of player has to play a lot more cricket than probably when I used to play the game. Obviously, with the addition of T20, the 3 formats. But that's when all the initiatives which COE and the SSM staff has taken, it will benefit them. As I told it's not only for the contracted or the targeted players, it will benefit even the state players. So I think ultimately injuries are part and parcel of any player, and I just want to reiterate that when you're playing at the highest level, you finish your whatever series. From that series to the next series, you automatically work hard on getting better, on getting fitter. Even though you do that, with playing at the highest level, you can get injured. So if you're thinking about not to get injured, then you're not playing to the best of your ability. So I think one thing which should be addressed, and I think that's changed dramatically, is how you see injury. Do you see injury as a negative thing, or do you think injury is part and parcel? You obviously get better in and evolve in the processes to take care of the players, but injuries are bound to happen. And I think that's why the monitoring system is very, very critical. And I've got no doubt that Adrian and Nick or Kamlesh and Raki are doing that when they're playing for the country. You get injured. So we have to understand that it's part and parcel of playing international cricket with the intensity you expect them to play.
So just in the case of Bumrah's isolation, they played to the squad, and unfortunately they did get the fitness game. So does it take sort of entire brain is like, why did COE like sort of give the fitness game before they got played? So does it help if selectors don't pick a player they are fully fit?
Okay, so I think we don't like to use the name blame, because when you're using the blame, then you're finding someone as a scapegoat, So I don't think, so maybe I don't know what you all feel, and you start blaming because of this and because of that. But there's a brilliant coordination between the COE, between the team management of both the teams and the SSM staff of both the teams and the selection committee. Now you're talking about Bumrah and Sai Sudarshan. When we send a fitness status report, and the process is that the selector reaches out to the COE asking for the fitness status report, and we collect the current fitness status and send a fitness status report to the selection committee chairman or chairperson in women's selection committee with a copy to obviously the head coach of both the teams and the BCCI. Now, Bumrah and Sai Sudarshan, there's always an asterisk, and this is one thing which you all will know, that when the media release comes from the BCCI, there's an asterisk attached to a player selection. And what does that asterisk mean? It means subject to fitness. So Bumrah and Sai Sudarshan were going to be picked to Sri Lanka subject to fitness clearance. And as I told before, you assess them, you move them from one stage to the next stage, and if the progression is slow, you communicate to the selection committee chairman and the head coach, which is happening seamlessly, and they understand that they're not yet ready to participate in an international series. Always it's player-centric and team-centric. So that communication is happening seamlessly. So the subject of fitness is something we require to keep in mind. Any press release, and I think what the BCCI has done is there is transparency in all the fitness reports and also the selection. At the end of the selection, whether it's a release to the press, it's clearly mentioned that these players are picked subject to fitness. Means if they don't clear the fitness test here, that means the selectors will know who are the other players who will go in their place if they don't clear the fitness test. I mean, it's basic common sense.
Just to add to your question, we basically have our selection meetings at least 3 to 4 weeks before the team departs. So therefore, 3 weeks before or 4 weeks before, We do not know the exact status of the player. Therefore, that asterisk subject to fitness is given because that particular player is under a program of rehabilitation. So if he gets fit within that period of 21 days or 28 days, he will be taken into the team. So that is crystallized. We do not outrightly reject him because on the date of selection, we are rejecting him because on that day he is not fit. But by the time it will be effectively required for the travel or to play the match, by that time he may be totally fit. So in that situation, we always keep that subject to fitness condition. So we do not deprive the player also. And this is very uncertain that within 21 days he will get fit or not. Nobody can predict that, as VVS has rightly, it is a human body. It is not a machine. So he may take 14 days time or he may take 28 days time, subject to his own body composition. Thank you.
With somebody like Nitish who spends a lot of time availability, probably injured, how does the COE ecosystem sort of help him stay mentally strong in this? I mean, he's a young guy, he wants to play, but he's not available most of the time. How do you handle all that?
Yeah, I think the mental side of a player undergoing rehab or getting injuries is something which we always require to keep in mind. So the player also knows that he's got injured. The player also knows that what is that he requires to do to get fit and be again participating in the commitments. Now from the COE side, we make sure that we make the player understand the workload. In this case, it's Nitish. Being an all-rounder, obviously, there's a lot of workload on him and how he becomes fitter, not only when he is playing various tournaments, but also when he's not part of any tournaments. And I think it's an ongoing process now of getting better, from your fitness levels, because everyone knows, now you go to IPL, you play state franchise, and then you start playing the domestic cricket or international cricket. So while you're playing the matches also, unlike before, where there's an off-season where you actually can get better at your fitness, the player should know that while playing the matches, how he productively and meaningfully uses the breaks to get fit. So I think the conversation with Nitish is injury is part and parcel. What is that you can do to get better to handle the workload of being all-rounder? And it's across the board. It's not only Nitish. Across the board, you want to tell, and that's why the screening at the start of the season is very, very important. Because if you see in the presentation, the parameters we have for all the fitness tests, the NFTC test is mentioned there. So all the players, all the contracted players and the targeted players come, before the start of the season, and they undergo, a string of fitness tests, which you must have seen with various machines up there and on-field activities. There's one new introduction which is fantastic, and Adrian got in that, which is your bronco test. As I mentioned, that while you're playing, it's very important for you to remain fit. Now, yo-yo is one test which we test the player is anaerobic capacity. Now, yo-yo can't be done when you're part of a series, because it can be really grueling for your body to recover. So the bronco test it becomes like a conditioning session. It also indirectly tests the fitness levels, the anaerobic fitness levels of a player, and that's taken on board across the various age groups, and we do that through the season, so that's something which can be repeatable.
You mentioned that the report for NFTC test.
Yeah.
And when increase of these numbers scale, numbers happen, does it force you to fasten the process?
Yeah, I think we done a very extensive interview process. As we mentioned, Andrew was part of the interview process when Nitin was selected in 2022, and that's why we reached out to Andrew the moment we got to know that Nitin didn't want to continue, or his term was getting finished. And Andrew, as Devjit mentioned, he'll tell, almost agreed and then backed out. Now, the second interview process was an extensive one, and you're happy to, I can share. The first candidate was from Australia. The second and third candidate are already working at the COE. Now, it's our responsibility to upskill them while looking to identify someone of that stature and experience and knowledge. So that process, it's not that the BCCI is not looking out for the suitable candidate, but you have to find the right candidate.
In fact, it's a rare commodity to fit into that position. So we have our technical persons who are at a certain standard. So the person who will be heading the sports science, he must be much better than them. So there are very limited persons, not only in India but across the world. So therefore, we are facing some problem in spite of repeated processes being done. We are not getting the right candidate. So because of the shortage and a huge shortage, I should say, we are not getting the person. But the process is on to find the right candidate.